Before we begin, let me ask you a question. What would it take for a 20-year-old to enter the most influential women's tennis organization and financially humiliate each and every well-known player on the team? Not via scandal or controversy, but simply by being herself. Because that's exactly what took place. Furthermore, the WTA did not celebrate the results. They started looking into it. The mainstream tennis media has been cautiously dancing around this narrative. Therefore, we're going to be honest, straightforward, and unambiguous. Imagine the interior of a WTA conference for commercial evaluation. Commonplace items. Quarterly projections on the table and spreadsheets on the screen. The merchandise columns have the customary names at the top. Goff, Swiatek, and Sablanka. The company has built its whole advertising persona around these faces over the course of years and millions of dollars. To align with those names, corporate partners pay higher fees. Sponsors built whole campaigns on those faces. The machine was that. The system was that. And it had been dependable for years. Then someone in that room gestured silently to the top of the column. A name that no one had anticipated. Alex. Not third, not second. Initially, and by a significant enough margin, that senior executives reportedly insisted on the statistics being validated before they were disseminated internally. Because it seemed inconceivable to anyone using conventional tennis marketing reasoning that a player outside the top 25 could make more money from jerseys and merchandise than the combined sales of 3 Grand Slam winners. However, it had already occurred. It was simply another Tuesday. This is the question you ought to be considering at this moment. Why would a sports organization look into a player who is too well-liked? The response is more uncomfortable than most, so keep watching. People are eager to confess. You must comprehend Alex's true identity in order to comprehend how we came to be here. The complete image, not simply the ranking number or the highlight clips. She was born on May 23, 2005, in Quezon City, Philippines, and grew up with a racket in her hand while the entire country silently watched, hoping and waiting to see if she would be the one to make a breakthrough. She became the highest-ranked Filipino player in WTA history in March 2026 when she achieved a career-high ranking of world number 29. Not only is it the highest at the moment, but it's the highest in the tour's whole history. Here's what rankings don't tell you, though. Results are described by rankings. Gravity is not described by them. Because the atmosphere changed wherever Alex appeared, whether it was in Miami, Dubai, Auckland, or Abu Dhabi. Stadiums that typically host courteous tennis spectators began to resemble a cross between a championship fight night and a rock concert. There was a difference in the energy. The sound was not the same. Tennis was no longer the only sport that people watched. They had come especially for her. One of the most well-known athletes in the world, Coco Gauff, the current Grand Slam winner, openly apologized to fans for having them wait before a match against Alex. Consider the true meaning of it. One of the biggest names in sports felt compelled to admit on camera that her opponent was the reason behind the stadium's attendance. When was the last time you've seen a professional tennis match like that? The world was introduced to her in the most dramatic manner conceivable during her breakthrough 2025 season. Before making it to the semifinals, she defeated the world's 5th-ranked player and then the world's 2nd-ranked player back-to-back. She had entered the Miami Open as a wild card, not a seed or a well-known name. That was not modeled by anyone. It was not projected by anyone. She simply rewrote what was deemed feasible after entering through the front door. Led in Sky Sports' Gigi, the host. Alex may already be the biggest star in women's tennis, according to Salmon's assessment of what she stood for. Not a budding star, not a contender for the future. In the present tense. Let's now discuss the merchandise, as this is where the story becomes truly complex and ceases to be a heartwarming underdog tale. A limited edition tee with Alex's name and the Sinagita flower, the national flower of the Philippines, printed over a picture of the grass blades at the All England Club was published by Nike. Georgina Camus, a Filipino artist, created the design. Consider it. The market's reaction was astounding. It was exquisite and rich in cultural significance. Within 48 hours, it was sold out on 4 continents. Now comprehend the true meaning of that number. This was more than a narrative about products. This was a market that was communicating clearly. There are more than 115 million ardent sports fans in the Philippines alone. Include the Filipino diaspora that is dispersed throughout Southeast Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and the United States. Those who purchase jerseys in order to watch a live feed at 3 in the morning. Those who purchase flights across continents in order to spend 2 hours in stadiums. Individuals who invest in their player rather than merely following her. Entirely. Now you have a commercial power that was previously unheard of by the WTA's current models. When Alex went to Nike's global headquarters in Oregon, Nike understood right away. Alongside some of the most famous players in all sports, her photo was displayed in the storied Ambassador Tunnel with the statement, "History in full bloom." As a courtesy, Nike does not place anyone in that tunnel. It's an earned placement. It's data. Following Emma Raducanu's 2021 U.S. tour, comparisons to her commercial success began to circulate. For 18 months, Open Wind changed how tennis brands distributed their marketing expenditures. Even while Alex was already generating stats at that level, she hadn't yet won a Grand Slam singles title. Major local juice corporations were lining up, including Globe Telecom, Bank of the Philippine Islands, and Boblat. She was featured on the cover of Vogue Philippines. The business community was fully aware of what it was observing. Whether intentional or structural, the institutional world's latency became the narrative. What allegedly transpired inside those closed WTA doors is as follows. When the merchandise data appeared on board members' desks, there was a lack of enthusiasm. It was not a deliberate zeal to capitalize on this business boom. Sources close to the situation claim that several board members voiced formal concerns about what they called merchandising equity, a term that seems fairly neutral until you consider who it was applied to. This is how the argument was reconstructed from various accounts. Was it a normal market force or an anomaly that needed to be corrected if Alex's commercial pull was so overwhelming that it was skewing market expectations and diverting sponsor attention from well-known WTA stars? Go through that once again slowly. They were discussing whether it was necessary to address Alex's excessive commercial power. To anyone outside that boardroom, the answer is stunningly clear. There was nothing wrong with the market. The WTA's commercial infrastructure was just not designed to hear what the market was saying. One that doesn't fit cleanly into the conventional tennis sponsorship model and is based on Southeast Asian fan culture, diaspora devotion, and a kind of fervent communal pride. Some in that boardroom preferred to manage that language rather than study it. In professional sports, however, internal inquiries seldom remain internal. Someone is always converses. A memo appears. The wrong individual receives an email from an irate executive. What was supposed to remain behind closed doors ends up making headlines. Fans began closely monitoring Alex's treatment by the organization responsible for her promotion once the story became public. They discovered a pattern. Despite exceeding all three in jersey revenue, Alex was not mentioned in WTA promotional letters that featured Swiatek, Sabalenka, and Goff. Side-by-side comparisons of her homepage placements, tournament feature stories that obscured her accomplishments in favor of players she had already vanquished, prominent marketing materials that prominently featured players who were ranked lower than her in terms of both commercial effect and performance. There was a clear discrepancy between what the institutional apparatus conveyed and what the market indicated about Alex. It was obvious. Additionally, fans who own smartphones don't keep quiet about such things. The screenshots went viral. The hashtags gained popularity more quickly. Comments from former players began to appear. Journalists covering tennis started making connections. The question that lay behind it all began to be raised by prominent voices in the sport. Would Alex receive the same promotional treatment if her passport was from Western Europe rather than Southeast Asia? Would anyone be looking into her jersey sales if her fan following was concentrated in Paris or London instead of Manila? These are awkward questions. They are meant to be uncomfortable. The idea is precisely that discomfort. This also included considerations about scheduling. Alex was switched to a night session start at the Dubai Championships, which had an impact on the amount of spectators at nearby games. The organizers of the tournament have their motivations. However, that choice wasn't made in a vacuum. It was present within months of accumulation, patterns that observers had been discreetly recording. All of those choices were scrutinized when the probe news surfaced. Tennis 365 has features. The head of tennis released an analysis. Sports magazines in the Philippines mobilized right away. Social media for tennis throughout the world devoted 48 hours to analyzing the ramifications. What was intended to remain private turned into one of the most important institutional discussions that women's tennis had seen in a long time. And Alex was in Miami getting ready to compete through every debate, headline, and opinion piece. That difference is important. Because suits argued over her sales numbers in an air-conditioned, she was working on the practice court in conference rooms. When you take a step back from politics and simply focus on the person at the center of it all, this is what most hits you. In an interview with Vogue Philippines, she stated, "I like to emulate the best of us Filipinos." She said that her desire to be a nice person is equally as important to her as everything she accomplishes on the court. No institutional jabs, no political statements, no corporate posturing, just a 20-year-old who still walks to the eateries she used to frequent as a child in Quezon City and who now has to get used to strangers requesting pictures on streets she has known her whole life. She explained it on her own. Being famous at home is something to get accustomed to, which makes it strange because being at home is like the most typical thing. The full burden of the overnight change condensed into a single, sincere moment. She remains the same Quezon City girl. She is currently among the most lucrative athletes in women's sports. Both statements are entirely accurate. They are both exceptional. Now consider her position going into the Miami Open in 2026. Eden 31st and ranked 29th in the world, returning to the same tournament where she entered as an unseeded wild card a year prior and completely changed the course of what was thought to be feasible. The player ranked 5th was defeated by her. The second-ranked player was defeated by her. She advanced to the semifinals. Nobody had predicted that any of that would occur. The expectations have completely changed since she returned. She is the first Filipino to rank in the top 30. The first with numerous victories over big champions and players in the top 10. The first in the Open era to make it to a tour-level final. First. That term eventually ceases to feel like a significant accomplishment and begins to feel like a distinguishing characteristic of a person. Eventually, the WTA inquiry into her jersey sales will be stored away, cataloged. When an inquiry turns out to expose much more about the investigators than the subject of the investigation, the majority of those involved will discreetly move on. The jerseys with the Sampita flower are not filed away. In places like Manila, Miami, Dubai, and Auckland, where women's tennis was never meant to inspire such a level of passion, those are currently on people's backs. She did more than simply outsell a roster. She increased the number of individuals in the universe who actually care about this.